I've been hitched to Michael for 7 years. His first flame has made a comeback. In just one look, he let go of our kid's hand and headed straight for that girl, and my little one was left behind. Lily had a nasty fever, so Michael and I rushed her to the nearby ER. He took her up to the doctor's office while I stayed downstairs to settle the bills. When I came back, both of them were gone. I tried calling Michael, but no one picked up. Maybe he took Lily to the bathroom, but even after searching everywhere, I couldn't hear Lily's voice. Where could he have taken her with a fever? Totally confused, at the end of the hallway, I spotted him chatting with a woman, and there was no kid next to them. The woman's silhouette looked so familiar. It was Rachel, the girl Michael left with White Moonlight 6 years ago. Is she back now? As I moved closer, before I could say anything, Rachel grinned and asked, "Emma, what brings you here?" She looked exactly the same as when she left, super stunning. Although I'd never met her in person, I'd seen her pics countless times, but I wasn't a fan. I called out to Michael. He glanced at me, and I demanded, "Where's Lily?" He turned around, saw the empty chair, and looked freaked out. Raising my voice, I asked again, "Michael, where's Lily?" Before he could answer, I spun and walked away. I kept yelling Lily's name, practically scouring the whole floor, but couldn't find her anywhere. Just as I was about to hit up the security room to check the cams, I heard an announcement that a kid named Lily had been found. I dashed over and saw her sitting in a chair, her face flushed, tears still wet. When she saw me, she immediately started crying. The staff mentioned an elderly person tried to snatch her, but she kept bawling, which caught the security guard's attention. I approached her, and without waiting for her to speak, I made her extend her hand. I slapped her hand hard and said, "Lily, didn't I tell you not to go with strangers?" She cried even harder. Michael, standing beside me, grabbed my wrist and asked, "Emma, why did you hit the child?" I shook his hand off, slapped him hard, and now I couldn't even bear to look at him. Seeing my stern face, Lily grabbed my hand, crying, and intermittently saying, "Mom, I looked for you for so long, couldn't find you." "That lady said she'd bring me to you." I hugged her, patting her back gently, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Lily, it's on me." She had told me before about a kid in her kindergarten whose parents split. Neither wanted him, so they left him with his grandma. I'd been keeping an eye on Lily's emotions during that time, but I never thought she'd remember that. Leaning on my shoulder, even through our clothes, I could feel her burning temperature. I turned to look at Michael, his eyes full of guilt. He slowly squatted down to talk to Lily, but before he could finish, I picked her up from the chair and walked away. I didn't want to hear his excuses. Over the years, the only person he ever thought about was Rachel. Fine if he didn't love me, but Lily, she's his kid too. She's pure. Who would have thought he'd leave a kid alone in a chair? After checking on Lily, getting her on some meds, she dozed off in my arms. Michael wanted to talk to me a few times, but I wasn't having it, so I just shut my eyes. Just thinking about what Lily said tore me up inside. She's my everything. No one can mess with her, not even Michael. When Lily woke up, she tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "Mom, I want water." I sat her on a nearby chair, grabbed a bottle from my bag, and handed it to her. After a bit, I saw Michael coming with a takeout box from a private kitchen and offered it to her. As he approached, Lily smiled, opened her arms, asking Michael to pick her up. Before he could lift her, a familiar voice called out to him, "Michael, my mom needs to go for a checkup. Can you help?" Michael looked at me, then at Lily. "Can you help?" I held him back, quietly saying, "Lily is sick, and you're gonna help Rachel. Emma, Rachel's a single woman. She needs help," he replied. He then kissed Lily on the forehead and hurriedly left. Pathetic people in the world, it was only Rachel in his eyes. Even when his daughter was almost snatched, his reaction was cold. His warmth disappeared whenever Rachel was around. Not even Lily could compete with his single-minded thoughts about Rachel. Well, their kid, whom he didn't even love, was the one he cared about. While Michael was gone, Lily kept asking, "Where did he go?" She sat on my lap, her head against my chin, whispering softly, "Lily, Daddy's gone to do a good deed." "Mom, Lily wants to find Daddy." She kept repeating it, so I took her out to get some fresh air. I felt suffocated in the infusion room. Holding Lily's medicine bottle, I just walked down the corridor and saw Michael and Rachel hugging each other. They looked like the perfect couple, and I felt like I was intruding. Rachel's gaze met mine with a hint of a smile that seemed kind of provocative. Lily called out, "Daddy?" Michael instinctively pushed Rachel away. When he turned around, our eyes locked. I had a faint smile on my face, watching this ridiculous scene unfold, and couldn't help but laugh softly. Lily didn't know what I was laughing about. She looked at me and then at Michael. I called out to Lily, pulling her away. She asked me, "Mom, who's that lady?" I didn't answer, unsure how to respond. Children don't hold grudges. But I wasn't a kid anymore. On the way back, I didn't say a word. Lily was tired and just kept sleeping. I carried her into the room, and Michael wanted to take her, but I just walked past him stiffly. After leaving the kids' room, I saw Michael standing at the door, and as soon as he saw me, he started explaining, "Emma, I didn't mean to lose Lily." Hearing him say that, I couldn't help but laugh mockingly. "She was almost snatched by traffickers, Michael? What were you doing?" I met his eyes, walked slowly up to him, pointing at his heart and said, "Ask yourself, besides you, is Rachel the most important? Even Lily comes after her." He frowned slightly and stayed silent. I went into the kitchen, poured him a glass of water, and placed it in front of him. "We've been married for 7 years, and I have no regrets. Our fate has come to an end. Let's get divorced." The water in his hand trembled, like he wanted to explain more, but I didn't want to hear it. I'd known him since I was 7, followed him, always chasing after him. But he never looked back at me, because he had Rachel by his side, which was enough for him. He didn't say anything more, and I didn't speak either. I was about to go back to the room to pack when he suddenly grabbed my arm. "Emma." Before he could finish, I cut him off. "Michael, I don't want you anymore." 7 years of marriage. I never thought he'd never love me. He never even had a flicker of affection. We grew up together. Our families lived nearby. We got married because of our similar backgrounds. When I found out he agreed to marry me, I happily linked arms with him. I asked him, "Do you really want to marry me?" He agreed. Then there was endless silence. When we were in college, we lived in different cities. Occasionally, we stayed in touch by phone. I didn't know he had an unrequited crush. I only found out after we got married. He didn't let me look through his albums or open his safe, just because they had memories of him and Rachel's youth. I knew Rachel's name from his friends. It now seems ridiculous. At that young age, I thought as long as I was good to him, he'd surely come to like me. But looking back now, I was deluding myself. I packed my bags, took a few of Lily's clothes. I coaxed Lily into going to my dad's place. As soon as the old man saw his granddaughter, he welcomed her, picking her up. I didn't get that kind of treatment when I was a kid. My dad was always busy, and I didn't have a mom. I practically grew up in Michael's house. My dad saw me return, didn't dare ask much, just played with Lily every day. I stayed at home for a few days, and Michael moved back to his house. When Lily saw him, she ran over, shouting, "Daddy, I missed you so much," while urging me to hurry. She had just finished cooking ribs, and her hands were greasy. He didn't mind, took the ribs from Lily's hands and ate them alongside her. I want to talk to him about getting a divorce. Ask Auntie to take Lily home. Standing still, I asked him, "When are you free? Let's get the divorce." He stared at me without blinking. In a low voice, he asked, "Emma, do we really have to get divorced?" Hearing his question, I couldn't hold back and slowly started to laugh. Before I could finish laughing, I saw someone in the distance, walking towards us with a kid. It was Rachel. As she approached, I didn't avoid her as she greeted Michael softly, and he responded in a gentle tone. Suddenly, Rachel looked at me and asked, "Emma, you probably don't know me." Before she could finish speaking, I interrupted, "Even though I haven't met you, I've heard your name." She looked at me silently, seemingly waiting for my response. After a moment, I suddenly remembered what Michael's friend had said. He mentioned that Rachel had dumped Michael back then and had hooked up with a better second-generation guy. I looked at her and bluntly asked, "Rachel, are you back now because your foreign boyfriend can't support you anymore?" Rachel's expression darkened at my words. It was Michael who grabbed my hand and apologized to her. "Emma, she's not like that." Before he finished, I pulled my hand away. "Michael, I meant to say that." Rachel's tears fell like they were on cue. I watched her performance with a smile, saying nothing. The kid beside her suddenly said to me, "You're a bad woman for stealing my dad." My head spun, and I suddenly couldn't keep up. Michael stared wide-eyed, looking at the kid in a daze. So their kid was already this big. I truly was a joke. This kid was a year younger than Lily. Coincidentally, before, Michael and I also had a kid. At that time, there were a lot of things going on at work, and Michael had to go abroad for a while. Memories flooded back, as if to engulf me. That day, there was blood all over me. I called an ambulance, and then I called Michael. Michael asked me if everything was all right, sounding a bit impatient. I thought he was just tired from work. Before I could say anything, I heard a woman's voice. "Michael, I'm scared." I didn't hear the rest of what was said. After a moment, I hung up abruptly, mustering the strength to open the door. The blood stained the floor red. Seeing that blood, I thought I was going to die. When he came back, he explained that he was talking about work with his colleagues and happened to be caught in an earthquake. But now, thinking back, maybe it was that night. The timing seemed to match with the kid's age. Lily ran over and saw the kid hitting me. She pushed him away and stood in front of me, asking, "Why are you hitting my mommy?" Lily wasn't a bold kid. She grew up sheltered, pampered by both families, timid and sensitive. She just couldn't stand seeing me being bullied. "You guys stole my dad." Hearing this, Lily looked at me with teary eyes and burst into tears. She hugged Michael's leg and asked him, "Daddy, you're Lily's daddy, right?" Michael seemed to still be in shock, standing frozen in place. Seeing that Michael didn't respond to her, she turned to me and asked again, but this time I didn't comfort her, because I didn't know the exact answer myself. If I told her it wasn't true, what if it turned out to be true later on? Seeing Lily running out, the housemaid followed her, worried, rushing out. She didn't know what was happening. She just saw Lily crying sadly. I picked her up and tried to hand her to the housemaid. "Be good, Lily. Go home with Grandma." "I don't want to. I don't want to. If I go out again, Daddy will be lost." She unreasonably threw a tantrum on me, struggling to find Michael. I pushed her into the housemaid's arms. "Take Lily home? I'll be back soon." After Lily walked away, I grabbed the kid's hand and started heading towards Michael's house. Seeing this, Michael reached out to pull me back, saying, "He's not my kid, Emma. Trust me." Hearing this, Rachel's tears fell like a kite with a broken string. "Michael? Have you forgotten that night? That night you were drunk?" "Rachel, I was drunk, but I didn't do anything." It seemed like they had to figure things out, but before they could say much, Rachel cried even harder, and Michael frowned, beginning to explain. I looked at him and asked, "Was it just you two that night?" He answered, "Yes." Well, in that case, what more is there to say? The fact was established, and I had no room for any fantasies. Rachel didn't say anything after that, but I could still imagine what happened that night. I looked at Michael and then at the kid beside her. With a sarcastic laugh, I said, "Rachel, you can chill. I'm giving Michael back to you." I took off the ring from my neck, grabbed Rachel's hand, and put the ring on her finger. The loosely fitting ring just happened to fit perfectly on her hand. I was stunned for a moment, but soon realized. Everything about marrying Michael was done according to Rachel's preferences. Now it was just about setting things right. I had planned to take the kid to Michael's parents' house to show them what he had done, but halfway there, I suddenly stopped in my tracks. I let go of the kid's hand. His parents had been so kind to me, and I couldn't bear to disrupt their lives. Since it had already happened, I decided to leave it at that. The chaotic scene, accompanied by Rachel's crying, made my head feel like it was gonna explode. I glanced at Rachel and then looked at Michael, saying, "Since the kid is yours, take good care of them." Before I could finish, I saw my father coming from a distance. He had a cane in his hand and swung it at Michael. He stumbled a bit, but managed to stay on his feet. My father stood there, looking at him, and swung the cane at him again. This time, he didn't hit Michael because Rachel hugged him. This time, he didn't hit Michael because Rachel hugged him. The cane landed solidly on Rachel instead. They embraced each other. Even I had to admit, they looked good together. My father, seeing this, questioned him. "When you married Emma, did you promise the same? Is this how you treated her?" "When Michael married me, he made great promises. He said he would treat me well, be good to me for a lifetime. But a lifetime is long, and he never changed because he never loved me." I grabbed my father's hand and whispered, "Let it go." The once youthful man was now filled with gray hair. He looked at me, his heartache evident in his eyes, and said, "How can I let it go? How? What else can be done?" That drunken night with just the two of them, everything that needed to happen happened. Except for the two parties involved, no one knew what had occurred. I looked at Michael and whispered, "Michael, I wish you both happiness." As he stepped back, he stumbled. In a hoarse voice, he replied, "Okay." When I went back home, Lily was still crying. She ran up to me and asked if the kid had nothing to do with her dad. I knelt down, embraced her, and softly said, "Lily, I'm sorry, Mommy doesn't know either." I didn't want to tell her the truth, nor did I want her father to become a fallen figure in her eyes. Week after week passed. Michael never came to see me again. Michael's parents had no idea what had happened, only that my father acted coldly towards them. I talked to my father a few times, and he kept yelling that he wouldn't bother with me anymore. Ever since Lily heard about the kid, she rarely asked about Michael. It seemed like she understood something. When I went back to pack my things, I pushed the door open and saw Rachel and Michael sitting at the dining table. The scene was reminiscent of how our family used to be, with the only difference being the people occupying the seats. Seeing me, Michael awkwardly stood up. He came over to me and glanced back at the woman and kid eating. I walked past him and into the master bedroom. The bedsheet was crumpled, and the man and woman in this house were all in pajamas. What happened was obvious. Looking at the scene, I chuckled softly, feeling the mockery ready to spill out. Before coming, I held on to the hope that Michael would present some compelling evidence. If he explained himself reasonably and begged me, maybe I would have softened. But I never expected it to turn out this way. Then I went to Lily's room to pack her things into a box. Before I could finish, Michael closed the door. He looked at me, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me into his arms. I looked up at him and asked softly, "When do you have time to go and get a divorce together?" His voice rang in my ears, "Emma, after we get divorced, take good care of yourself and Lily." His words made me sick. They were all sitting down to eat as a family of three, but they couldn't stop thinking about my kid. I hesitated for a while before finally mustering up the courage to ask, "Is the kid hers, yours?" He frowned tightly, as if reluctant to admit the answer, but eventually conceded with just one word. The answer was what I expected, but hearing it still made me sick to my stomach. I pushed him away, ran to the bathroom, and leaned over the toilet, dry heaving. He patted my back, but I pushed him away, saying, "Michael, please stop disgusting me." I stood up, rinsed my mouth out, moving things back and forth a few times. Michael followed behind me, and I didn't know what he was going to say. I didn't want to hear him speak. As I left, I saw Michael in the rearview mirror staring blankly at the back of my car. After a short while, Rachel came down from upstairs. She wrapped her arms around Michael's waist like a devoted, loving couple. I avoided looking at them and focused on the road. When I was moving things inside, Lily ran over, constantly looking back. I didn't know what she was looking at. During my second trip moving things, she couldn't help but ask me, "Mom, where's Dad? Why didn't Dad come?" I put things down in the living room, squatting down, pulling Lily into my arms, and whispered to her, "Dad won't be coming anymore." My father grunted and said, "It's better he doesn't show up. The world is better off without him." Lily couldn't stand anyone speaking ill of her father, pursed her lips, tears streaming down her cheeks. Before my father could console her, I stopped him. Lily looked at me, reached out and hugged my neck, asking, "Dad doesn't want Lily anymore." I gently stroked her back and reassured her softly, "Dad still loves Lily. He's just been really busy lately. So he won't be coming around." Naturally, he was too busy. Busy taking care of his other kid. Michael and I had agreed on the time to divorce. Just as we left, I saw Michael's car parked outside. On the way, neither of us said a word. I looked at his gaunt cheeks, looking like he was in his early 20s. He was this thin back in college, didn't eat well, always buried himself in the library. I teased him, saying, "Michael, you not getting enough allowance from Auntie. Need me to chip in a bit?" He playfully tapped my head, laughing, "Oh, you figured it out. Uncle, you're giving me too much allowance. Look how much weight you've gained." At 19, I thought he might have had a slight liking for me, even if it was just a tiny bit of a crush. After graduation, Michael's father's health deteriorated, so he had to take over the business and attend social events. Irregular eating habits, coupled with days of heavy drinking, worsened his stomach problems, and he grew thinner. I always thought he was busy with work and didn't have time to eat. But looking back now, that was around the time Rachel had just gone abroad. He was drowning his sorrows in alcohol. After we got married, I tried to help him take care of his health. But I couldn't cook, and I almost set the kitchen on fire once. He cleaned up the kitchen, leaned against the counter, wrapped his arms around my waist, pulled me close to him, and said, "You've never done household chores. If your dad finds out I made you cook, he might break my legs." I stammered and didn't say anything. He kissed my cheek and softly said, "I'll take care of these things from now on." Learning to cook was abandoned, but every day I had the maid cook for him and then delivered the food to his office. Day after day, year after year. After Lily was born, he began to take better care of himself. Honestly, before Rachel returned, he was a good father. He always granted Lily's requests. When Lily had cavities, I banned her from eating candy, but he would sneak it to her. Lily would smile, with the candy still in her mouth. I scolded her, and she threw a pot at Michael. Then they both stood facing the wall as a timeout. Michael called her a silly girl, saying she can't even hide that she ate candy properly. Lily grabbed him, whispering in what she thought was a low voice, "Dad, next time, break the candy into small pieces, then Mom won't see it." Little did I know that I could hear every word they were saying, but I pretended not to. I thought we'd keep living like this, but things changed unexpectedly. We were no longer husband and wife. We went our separate ways. Without me saying a word, Michael suddenly said, "Emma, let's not see each other again." I was taken aback and looked at him, replying, "Okay." After a moment of silence, he took out a stack of documents from the glove compartment and handed them to me. "This is for you and Lily. It's half of my company's shares and all the properties." "This is for you and Lily. It's half of my company's shares and all the properties." He only kept the house we used to live in. The thought of Rachel living there now made me sick. I took the pen Michael handed me and signed on it. Then he handed me the ink pad, and I pressed my fingerprint on it. 2 copies of the documents were made, one for him and one for me. I put the one I received in my bag. As I was about to get off the car, he locked the door. I was puzzled about what he was going to do. Seeing him taking out the ring, I gave Rachel, and handing it back to me, he said, "Emma, believe it or not, when I married you, I was intending to live a good life with you." Reading his words, I couldn't help but laugh. A person who wants to live a good life wouldn't travel abroad to meet his ex-girlfriend and have a kid with her. Some things are better left unsaid. And I didn't want to hear them. Michael stared at me intently. The word hypocritical kept circling in my mind. I saw Rachel knocking on the car window while holding the kid's hand. I glanced at Michael and said, "You can live a good life with Rachel. I won't disturb you." Michael remained silent. After a moment, I added, "I'll try to keep Lily away from you as much as possible." "Okay," he replied and unlocked the car door. I threw the ring he gave me into the bushes. It wasn't mine, and I didn't want it. As I walked away, I heard Rachel crying. The sound annoyed me, so I sped up until her cries faded away. To avoid questions from Michael's elders, Lily and I moved back to the apartment we lived in before we got married. Lily was complaining that I forgot to bring her candied hawthorns. I hugged her and apologized softly. She looked up and asked, "Mom, when will Dad come?" "I haven't seen him in a long, long time." Hearing her question, I thought for a while and replied softly, "Tomorrow, Mom will have Alex take you to see him." Alex and Michael were friends and my college classmates. When the company needed someone to manage the overseas division, I brought him in. Later, when I was no longer at the company and needed a trustworthy person to manage it, I brought him back from abroad. He didn't complain at all. I knew Michael had a crush, as he told me. He advised me to keep an eye on Michael and not travel abroad too often. I didn't listen then, but now I realize it was a joke. Michael didn't like how close I was to Alex, so we grew apart. Unexpectedly, even Michael turned against me, while Alex always stood by my side. Tomorrow is the annual meeting of Michael's company, and it's fine for Lily to go and have fun. I took the kid to the bottom of the building and saw Rachel walking in front of me in high heels. I handed the kid to Alex and couldn't help but be curious, so I took a look. In the past, I used to stand by Michael's side at such events, but now someone else was there. Their kid was playing with Lily below. He held a cake and smashed it onto Lily's face. Michael saw it but pretended not to, stepping back. It was as if the one being bullied wasn't his daughter. Lily looked around for Michael for a long time. Seeing no adults, she felt aggrieved, but just pouted, not daring to cry. I hurried over, wiped the cream off her face with a tissue, and held her in my arms, saying, "Lily, Mom is here." When Lily saw me, she couldn't hold back her tears and said, "Mom, Dad saw it, but didn't help me." Her words stunned me. I felt that Michael was really cold-hearted. It was obvious that Lily was the one he watched grow up. But maybe since they were both his biological kids, he didn't show any bias. Lily's tears wet my shoulder, and I had never seen her so wronged before. Seeing Alex coming, I asked him to hold Lily. Then I passed by the kid and walked straight outside. Rachel was cuddling with Michael, whispering. I wanted an explanation, but seeing them like that, I didn't want to approach. On one side, the kid saw Alex distracted and about to run away. He reached out, grabbed him, dragged him in front of me, and asked Lily in my arms, "Lily, how did he bully you? Uncle will help you." He was struggling to speak clearly. Alex could also guess what happened. He dragged the kid back into the hall, grabbed a piece of cake. Before I could stop him, he slapped the cake directly on the kid's face. The kid's crying was loud and attracted a crowd. People from outside also came in. Seeing the cake plate in Alex's hand, Michael started accusing without distinction. "Alex, he's just a kid, how could you? Alex, he's just a kid, how could you?" Lily saw this and started crying again, as if realizing her father didn't love her enough. "Michael, watch your son." Alex pushed the kid towards Michael. Then he held Lily with one hand, grabbed my hand with the other, and left the scene. When we got to the underground parking lot, Lily gradually calmed down. He whispered, "Lily, remember, treat others how they treat you. This is called karma." Lily lay on his shoulder, sobbing. Alex sat in the driver's seat, looking at me frequently. I smiled and asked, "What? Do you pity me or Lily more?" He also smiled but didn't say anything. After a while, he said in a slightly annoyed tone, "I warned you before, you didn't listen. This is your own doing." Maybe he thought what he said was too harsh, so he didn't speak again. I didn't speak either, just turned to look out the window at the neon lights. It was the same city, the same night, but the person by my side had changed. Maybe seeing me quiet for so long, he asked me, "We have a meeting at Michael's company tomorrow. Are you coming?" I looked back at Lily in the back seat, thought for a while, and said, "I'll go." Alex said, "I'm becoming less like myself. I used to be decisive, but after marriage, I revolved around my husband and kids, occasionally caring about his marriage." He smirked and said casually, "I actually wanted to marry into your family, but it's a pity you married early." I chuckled. "Come on, with your good condition, you should buy a house early and find a suitable person. The word marriage hasn't even been spoken yet." He stopped me. "Emma, focus on living your own life first." I smiled awkwardly. Perhaps a carefree life was what he wanted. I had been nosy. Lily was woken up by our conversation. She opened her eyes slightly, looked at Alex and then at me. Alex leaned over and whispered, "Uncle has gone." She made a sound of acknowledgement, then turned her head and went back to sleep. He took a few steps forward, then came back. "Lily, you must come tomorrow." I didn't understand what he meant by must come, but as soon as I arrived at the company, Alex's assistant hurriedly came up to me and told me that Michael and Alex had started fighting. I pushed open the door to the rest area and saw Alex pinning Michael down and hitting him. I called out to Alex. He turned to look at me. His face scratched. Michael reached out to hit Alex. I ran up, grabbed Alex, and took all the hits on my back. Michael supported me and tried to talk to me. I felt looking at him was unnecessary. I gently pushed his hand away and stood up. Alex seemed like a kid who had done something wrong, touching his nose and smiling at me. Then he stood behind me. I told him to leave, walked to the door, and heard Michael call my name. I paused for a moment, but this time I didn't look back. Glancing back at Alex, he was still smiling secretly. "Alex, what are you laughing at?" He leaned against the wall, smiling. "Are you mad because I fought him?" I didn't respond. Looked at his face and poked him. He winced. Seeing his reaction, I teased him. Oh, seems like Alex can feel pain too. Why did you fight with Michael? Both of you are 60 years old combined. Before I could finish, he pulled me into his arms, saying softly, He treated you unfairly. I won't allow that, Emma. He said this very seriously. Seeing my lack of reaction, he added, Emma, I won't let anyone bully you. Not anyone. I looked up at him, struggled a bit, trying to break free from his grasp. But to my surprise, he held on even tighter. In the distance, I saw Michael standing not far away. I thought Michael couldn't care less. Now, with his sweetheart by his side, he couldn't see me at all. In a low voice, Alex whispered in my ear, saying, I haven't been to my uncle's for dinner in a long time. Before he could finish, I already knew what he was up to. Today, Michael would be coming home. When I glanced back and saw Michael walking away, that's when he finally let me go. As we walked out of the company gate, Alex threw his coat over his head, leaving just one eye peeking out. He escorted me home, giving me all kinds of instructions, asking me to have dinner at my dad's place. I didn't really listen, but I couldn't ignore my dad's phone call. Upon entering the house, I saw Alex carrying a large bag of toys for kids. Then he went back to the car to bring in some specialty products. My dad looked delighted, saying, Alex, take it slow, take it slow. Lily looked up at me, then at Alex, and went over to find a bag of candy among those things. She couldn't open it, glanced at me, and passed by me directly. She ran to Alex, handing him the bag of candy, smiling broadly. Uncle Alex, can you help me open it? Alex squatted down, opened the packaging, handed her one, and popped it into her mouth. I walked over, reaching out. Lily reluctantly handed the candy to me, not even wanting to look at me. I also didn't want to pay attention to her, so I went into the house, leaving the three of them outside. I saw Alex and Lily whispering to each other, not sure what they were talking about, until I saw the candy in Lily's mouth. Alex? He turned back to look at me. Then Lily approached. Lily ran over to him, and he picked her up and ran, saying, Don't let your mom catch us, or I'll be in trouble too. I followed behind them. Lily laughed happily in his arms, saying, Mom can't catch us. Mom is silly. Before she finished speaking, they bumped into Michael's family. Lily saw Michael holding a little boy's hand. Her expression changed slightly. She glanced away and didn't even look at him. She nestled in Alex's neck, not saying a word. Michael saw this, let go of the boy's hand, tried to hug Lily. She resisted and didn't want to go over. Alex took a few steps back, creating some distance between them, and Lily's expression became more natural. She looked at Michael, asking in a childish voice, Are you my daddy? Michael's expression changed, took a few steps forward, and replied softly, Lily, I am your dad. Lily shook her head, pointing to the little boy on the ground, saying, No, you're not my dad. You're his dad. Pointing to the little boy on the ground, saying, No, you're not my dad. You're his dad. After that, she nestled back in Alex's neck, not saying another word. I saw Michael frozen in place, his gaze fixed on Lily without blinking. Just as he was about to speak, Rachel stepped forward, held Michael's hand, seeming to comfort him. Michael shook her off, looked at me. There seemed to be regret in his eyes. I tugged at Alex's sleeve and he turned to look at me. With just one glance, he understood what I meant. I followed behind him, wanting to go home. Michael called out to me, asking, Emma, how have you been recently? I turned to look at him, with a hint of doubt, made a sound of agreement, then quickly realized, I've been doing great. Without you, I'm doing just fine. Alex turned back to look, chuckled. The ridicule in his laugh was about to spill out. Lily asked him, Uncle Alex, what are you laughing at? Some people don't know how to appreciate. He held Lily and ran back, making her laugh all the way. When he was taking us back that night, he noticed Lily wasn't in high spirits, so he went upstairs to play with her. Lily asked me, Mom, does Dad still want me? I didn't answer, unsure how to respond. Seeing me silent, she sat on the carpet, pretending to be an adult, shaking her head, saying, Forget it then. Alex tossed a doll to her, softly saying, Lily, how about Alex being your dad? She continued to play the adult, considering. I tossed a pillow at him. He caught it, then flirtatiously threw a glance at me. What do you think? Consider it? It then flirtatiously threw a glance at me. What do you think considerate? I have looks, I have a good figure, and I even have some savings, the keys I can still marry into the family. His words hit me bit by bit. I knew he probably wasn't joking. He's good to me, good to Lily, but not without any ulterior motives. When I saw him, he made an excuse. Emma, I was just kidding. Don't take it seriously. I just replied and saw him off. Lily looked at him and reached out for him to hold her. She whispered something in Alex's ear, but I couldn't hear what she said and didn't bother to ask. As she was about to fall asleep, I was going out to handle some work when suddenly she grabbed the hem of my clothes. She said, Mommy, Uncle Alex is very nice. Then she closed her eyes, looking as if she had fallen asleep. Closing the door behind me, her words kept echoing in my ears. Alex is very nice. He knew I liked Michael. Back in college, he helped me get noticed by Michael. He knew I liked Michael. Back in college, he helped me get noticed by Michael. He knew I liked jewelry, so when I turned 25, he gave me a piece of jewelry designed by one of my favorite designers. I told him Michael didn't like me meeting him often, and he respected that by not meeting me anymore unless necessary. Looking back, he did truly understand me. If I had met him before Michael, I might have fallen for him. But right now, he and I were not meant to be. I focused on work and pushed aside any lingering thoughts until late at night when sleep finally crept in. The next day, after dropping Lily off at kindergarten, I went to work at the company. Days passed by in a routine. Post-divorce life wasn't as unbearable as I had thought. In fact, it felt somewhat liberating. Previously, everything I did was to suit Michael's likes and dislikes. He disliked me being a strong, independent woman, drinking in front of him, or even the way I slept. Since parting ways with him, I could finally do all those things. Alex was always by my side, helping me navigate through some tricky situations in work and life. He even moved from the hotel to a house opposite mine. One day he was cooking, and there was a doorbell. When I opened the door, I saw Michael holding a big bouquet of roses. We stood face to face, and I showed no intention of inviting him in. He said, I came to see Lily. I turned to Lily, called her over, and asked her if she wanted to have dinner with him. Lily shook her head and softly said, He's not my dad. He belongs to someone else. The first time she said this, Michael probably thought Lily was just upset with him, but when she repeated it, his eyes widened, face turning pale. He slowly squatted down beside Lily, attempting to talk to her. Lily turned her head, pointed to Alex bringing out the food, and said, My dad is over there. I was startled. Michael couldn't believe it either. He seemed unsteady on his feet, then sat on the ground and asked, Lily, what did you say? I don't like you. Don't come to my house anymore, she said as she tried to close the door. She used to depend a lot on Michael, but ever since she heard a kid bullying her and calling Michael dad, she changed her attitude towards him. She no longer liked Michael. Alex overheard Lily's words and came closer, asking her to repeat. She turned away, grunted. Uncle Alex, wait until you catch up with Mommy before saying anything. Alex glanced at me. I didn't meet his eyes, and instead I called Lily to wash her hands for dinner. Seeing this, Alex sighed deeply. At night, after Lily fell asleep, he took me to his house. There were 2 glasses of red wine on the table. I didn't move forward, just looked at him and asked softly, Why did you bring me here? He came from behind, wrapped his arms around my waist, and rested his head on my shoulder. Emma, I like you. But Alex, he turned me around and kissed my lips lightly. Just a brief, gentle kiss. He said, It's okay, Emma. I can wait for you for a lifetime. A lifetime, that's so long. I can wait for you for a lifetime. A lifetime, that's so long. I heard from my dad that Michael had been deceived. Ever since they changed the lady of the house, they cut off ties with Michael, not allowing him to come home or acknowledging Rachel, his supposed daughter-in-law. When we returned home that night, we saw Michael smoking under my building. I wanted to approach him, but Alex held my wrist. I turned to look at him with a question in my eyes. We stayed silent, staring at each other for what seemed like a minute before he finally let go and said, "Go on then." Michael had visible stubble on his chin. He was someone who cared a lot about his appearance, so how could he let himself go like this? I looked at him, and he looked back at me. After a while, he said, "Emma, come back to me. I miss you so much." Upon hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. While smiling, I asked, "Michael, are you out of your mind?" Suddenly, he grabbed my wrist and explained that he and Rachel's kid had no biological relationship. The DNA report was forged by Rachel. It had nothing to do with him. I listened in silence until he was done. Then I pulled my hand away. "So what, Michael? You were deceived? What does that have to do with me?" "I'm sorry, Emma. Please come back to me, okay?" Saying this, he tried to hug me. I took 2 steps back, distancing myself from him. "Michael, we are in the past tense now. We will never go back." I walked up to Alex and extended my hand to him. He held my hand and glanced back at Michael. At night, when Lily was asleep, Alex came to my room to sleep and leaned down to give me a light kiss on my lips. He deepened the kiss afterwards. My breath was taken away. I pushed him away, and he finally let go. Holding me tightly, he asked me, "Please don't leave, okay?" His tone was pleading. Alex has always lived freely and unrestrainedly. I had never seen him like this before. After waiting for a long time without my response, he asked me again. I just murmured in agreement and softly asked, "Where do I go?" "By Michael's side, I won't go back." I responded quietly in the darkness. But that night, he still didn't let go of me, holding me tightly, as if afraid I'd run away. The next morning, he woke up as soon as I moved. His first question was, "Where are you going?" I looked at him and smiled lightly. "I'm just gonna have some water." He looked surprised and flustered, and this lasted for about a week. Lily shook her head, saying, "Uncle Alex, my mom won't run away." But he just wouldn't listen. Until the three of us went to the beach to play. He took out a ring and put it on my hand. As I was about to take it off, I heard him say, "We don't have to get married. I'm willing to wait for you, but Emma, you have to give me a chance." And the ring stayed on. I really didn't want to get married again. I thought he was going to bring up the topic of marriage next. But he never did. In this life, in this house, the three of us, eating 3 meals a day, living through all 4 seasons, will make the right decisions at the right time.